Hello everyone, this is John Ward with Appalachian Homes, People and Places, and I'm here with Archie Baird, and we're down in the La Follette area of Campbell County in East Tennessee, and he lives here, right here on this beautiful creek. What is this called? Ollis Creek? Ollis Creek. And he lives right here at the head of one of the most popular trail and riding areas in East Tennessee, probably. How many acres is it behind you that's for riding?
It's around behind that went with the water plant, there's 1,000 acres.
1,000 acres back in here. But there's
and then you go all into Royal Blue and all of that.
There's tens of thousands of acres, and this has become a popular area for riders. But Archie bought this old water treatment plant, and we're going to show you that in another video. And he bought it and converted it into a home and his business, and he's built this guest house right here on the creek, and it's a beautiful place right here. And we're sitting here, but I got to talking to Archie the other day we was in one of the stores there, and he saw me, and he got to telling me about running Moonshine when he was 13 years old, and it was interesting. So Archie, you want to tell us about that a little bit? What happened there?
Well, my stepdad sold Moonshine whiskey, and we didn't have a car. And when I was about 13 years old, I had traded for an old car as a 52 Ford. And we went across Whistle Creek Mountain, which is outside of Jellicoe, and we got a load of whiskey, and we were coming back, and I was sitting on a pillow to see out of the car. I was so small. And we got on top of the mountain and had the whiskey in the car, and we were coming back home. And I saw a car coming, so I pulled over, and when the car went by, it was the high sheriff. And but he didn't stop, and I didn't stop, so we kept on going. We got back home with the whiskey.
So I was asking Archie about how this came about, and his stepdad sold Moonshine, or he calls it whiskey, and so he didn't drive. So the moonshiners would drop off whiskey, and then he would sell it to people who would come by the house. And that was way back in the mountains. It's hard to explain to people exactly that's watching the video, but that was back in the country, wasn't it?
It was. And it was between Newcomb and Elk Valley on a little dirt road called Little Elk.
Little Elk. And that was about 1963, and you was
about 63 because I was 13 and I was born in 50.
But he had to drive and go get some in his car at 13 because nobody showed up with any whiskey or moonshine, and they ran out, so he went across the mountain. But he went on. We talked about that just a little bit. But go on and tell the story about how you went to Vietnam and what happened there.
Well, when I was in Vietnam, my dad got saved and got in church, and he never did sell no more moonshine whiskey. But while I was there was one night I was laying under a mosquito net, and I was telling this story to my sister here just the other day, and I never thought about it until here lately. But I was laying under a mosquito net, and the water started coming out of my eyes and puddled up in my ears and dripped off on my shoulders, and my shoulders were wet. And I thought, well, why is this water coming out of me like this? And I realized for the first time in my life that if I died there, that I was going to go to hell, that I'd never been saved. And I believe that my little moonshining dad was praying for me. He had gotten church and got saved. And I came back home after my tour of duty, and I stayed drunk for day and night. For 3 years, I didn't sleep in a bed. I slept in the car, on the floorboard, or, if I made it home, I was too ashamed to go in. And my mother would come out and try to get me to go in the house, and I just tell her, no, I'm all right, Mom. And I was, in the floorboard of the car. But that went on for about 3 years, day and night. And I had a friend that I used to drink with, and I met him in a store here in La Follette. I had moved to La Follette and was working at a garage here at La Follette. And he said, Archie said, I've got saved, and they've made me a deacon, and I want you to go to church with me. And I said, well, I'll go with you sometimes, because I didn't want nothing to do with church and none of that. And So he came by again once, and he said, Archie, I really want you to go to church with me. And I ended up going to church with him. And during that service, they came back and asked me if I wanted to go up for prayer. And I went up and prayed and told them I got saved so they'd leave me alone so I could go home. The church came around and gave me the right hand of fellowship. And I went back home. I was still drinking, doing all the things that I was doing before. And me and my wife got into it one night, and I broke all the pictures off the wall. I broke all the dishes. And I had two little babies, a little boy and a little girl, sitting on the couch. And I told her, I said, I'm going back to church tonight, and I want to tell them that there's nothing, that I didn't get saved. There's nothing different in my life. So I went back to church that night, and I walked in, and I told the pastor, I said, Preacher, I didn't get saved. I said, I'm still drinking. I'm still doing all the things that I was doing. And I went over and sat down in the amen corner, and he preached that night, and I can't tell you a word that he said, but when he got through preaching, he dropped an old big black Bible where you walk up into the choir. He was behind the rocks. He just dropped it. And seemed like before it hit the ground, I was on it, crying and praying that God would save me. And I cried and I prayed, and seemed like everything that I'd ever done in my life was coming before me. And I was asking God to forgive me. And I prayed and I cried. And I thought, well, God ain't going to save me. I've been too wicked, and God ain't going to save me. So I thought, I will get up and I will leave the church, because I've already been up there once and told them that, I got saved and lied. And now here it is, I've cried and prayed, and God won't save me. And I got up and I turned around, and the preacher said, Archie said, you've prayed all you know to pray, ain't you? And I said, yes, I have. And he pointed at that Bible, and it had tears all over it. He said, do you believe if God came back tonight the way that you've cried and prayed, that he would send you to hell? And I thought for an instant, and no come out of my mouth, and it was all over. That's when God saved me, 45 years ago, when God saved me.
It's been good ever since.
It's been good.
You're a retired heat and air guy.
Retired.
You had your own business, retired.
And
you've got several properties. You got this property here that's a very unusual property that I'm sure people's going to want to see in the next video. And then you got a tiny home that you built, and several other cottages that you've built.
I do.
And I'm looking forward to seeing some of those. So that's a good story. And I didn't know about you getting saved later on. So you went from moonshining to getting saved, and God's been good to you.
He has.
Been good to you.
Yes.